everyone, how are you doing? Hope you're keeping well. It is a bit darker than usual. The lights are on, so I guess the video quality is probably a bit crapper than usual as well. This means two things. It means that the evenings are drawing in, getting to autumn, getting to winter, getting a bit miserable. And also it means that I'm back to recording in the evenings after I get in from work. So there we go. That's what that means. I'm also, however, back from Bring Out Your Lead this year. This was actually Bring Out Your Lead 2020. That was postponed from July to October last year, and then from October to July this year, and then from July to October this year, and finally just happened. So that was exciting. Bit different from usual because obviously different time of year. People had different commitments this time of year. The event. Sorry, I should explain what Bring Out Your Lead, BOYL, is. Old hammerers will know, but obviously not everyone is in the old hammer scene. Bring Out Your Lead is the annual old hammer gathering at the Foundry in Newark. So it's where a bunch of people get together to play old games with old figures. Typically Games Workshop, but not always, on both the games and the figures front. Sometimes people play new games with old figures. And sometimes the more avant-garde in the old hammer scene play old games with new figures. Get that? So, you know, it is a bit everything goes, but everything is played with the old hammer spirit, which is very much that you're playing to participate in a thing with people, and you're creating a storyline on the table, and you're playing to the character of your army. So you're not really playing to win. You're certainly not min-maxing everything and playing sort of tournament-y style. Everything is very much more relaxed, very much more, I don't know the rules, absolutely, so let's roll a dice and this or this. It's all very easygoing and a lot of fun. Certainly the most fun that I have ever had playing any kind of game has been playing games in the old hammer scene. And the event, as I say, is held at Foundry, War Games Foundry in Newark. They've got a big old carriage court there that the Foundry shop is in, and a big marquee in the middle of that, and most of the games happen in and around that marquee. So in July this is fine. In October it was a bit cold and a bit wet, especially on the Saturday. And I went up with a little bit of a sniffle. I did do a COVID test before I went to make sure that I was totally safe, and I did wear a mask when I was indoors over the weekend. But I was sat in a very well ventilated room on Saturday, and what was a fairly minor sniffle on the way up turned into a bit of a full-blown cold. So I had to miss out sadly on the pub on Saturday night. I did go on Friday night, but I had to miss out on the pub on Saturday night, and then was a bit worse for wear on the Sunday anyway. But never mind, the gaming went on. This year I went up with Harry, as usual, my friend Harry from the old hammer scene, and also a chap called Mike, who it was his first time going, so that was a bit of an honour for us to take him up to BOYL for the first time. In fact, he took us in his car. Because we were stopping off in Nottingham on the way up to pick up Joe Deaver's fantasy miniature collection from Nottingham. So that was another highlight of the weekend. We spent a long time in the mornings before going to Foundry and in the evenings after coming back, poring over Joe Deaver's collection and trying to spot the treasures in amongst it, and also unfortunately spotting quite a lot of lead rot. There's some serious problems in that collection. It needs a lot of conservation, but if anyone can conserve that collection, it's Mike, who is a bit of an expert on ancient figures, more ancient than my experience of most figures, and is probably the perfect man to deal with that collection. He's also just launching Broadsword Miniatures, so if you haven't come across Broadsword Miniatures, they've got the rights to Hinchcliffe and a few other fantasy bits and pieces that will be coming back out quite soon, so that's old figures getting re-released. Good news, we like that. So yes, it was an odd weekend, partly because of the weather, partly because of the change in time of year, partly because of the petrol crisis. Not everyone could get the fuel to I should say the supposed petrol crisis. I'm not totally convinced there was actually a shortage, but a media-induced shortage. So not everyone who was going to go was able to get there because of that. Plus, of course, we're still in a pandemic and not everyone felt comfortable being out. I didn't feel totally comfortable being out, but I think I tested when I came back and I have been negative even though I had a cold. I think that was nothing to do with going up, so I think it was okay. But yes, it was an odd one. Many years I have been up and have been involved in the big game that gets played and planned and played. This year I went up with really nothing. I took a Hero Quest board. As I said in the previous video, I took Hero Quest up to try and play some of that, but I really had no particular plans. Ended up jumping on the big game, but just with a couple of units of spearmen on Friday afternoon. Killed a few hours that way, killed a lot of spearmen that way, didn't kill very many ogres, and in fact killed no ogres. I was up against the very hard-hitting wing of what felt like the very hard-hitting wing of Steve Beale's Chaos Army, but I think every wing of Steve Beale's Chaos Army was a hard-hitting wing. Certainly my spearmen could make neither head nor tail against the ogres. And then on Saturday, met a couple of very nice guys called John and Keith, and played a lot of Mighty Empires. Harry and I entered Foundry. I had in my box of Hero Quest. He had his box of Mighty Empires, and we were immediately pounced on for some Mighty Empires. And if you've played Mighty Empires, it's not a short game. I was thinking, we'll have a couple of hours of this, and then we'll crack the Hero Quest out. And spent all day playing Mighty Empires. I am not the world's biggest fan of Mighty Empires. As a campaign system, it's probably interesting. As a board game in its own right, I'm not a fan of any game where you can just basically let dice roll themselves and play the game for you. There's a little bit of strategy, but because it takes such a long time, we only got into campaign phase 3, I think, and there really wasn't much time to play the strategy elements of it. It's not my favourite game, but we played with Harry's homemade tiles and they look very pretty, so that's what matters really, isn't it? And on the Sunday I did manage to get a bit of a crowd together and play some Hero Quest, which was fun. Not the Eyes of Chaos that I had planned to play, because that was a 2 adventure game. I thought, well, if we play it on the Saturday we'll have time, but on the Sunday morning we didn't really have time. We didn't even finish one. I picked one. We had a team of 6, I think 6 adventurers, so I picked a quest from the Ogre Horde supplement, because I wanted to use my ogres. I painted up an ogre chieftain. I wanted to put him on the table, so I wanted to use ogres, but also it had a lot of monsters for them to churn through. I didn't want 6 heroes to just walk straight through, but I had neglected to realise that Ogre Horde is quite hard for 4 heroes, or nay, impossible for 4 heroes if they don't have the quest treasures from the first campaign. So it was fairly hard going. We had barbarians going into 2nd and 3rd incarnations. The dwarf was in the 2nd incarnation. The only hero who didn't die was the wizard. He was obviously playing as the wizard is intended to play, and staying at the back and keeping out of trouble and running away from everything. Unfortunately, he wasn't a particularly healy wizard, which would have been a lot of help. But yeah, there was some particularly poor dice rolling from one of the barbarians. He'd not been to the Conan school of barbarianing for sure. But that was fun. It's a Sunday morning tradition. Normally George Quayle, who is part of the Till Dice Do Us Part podcast, runs an advanced Hero Quest game on the Sunday morning that I've been a part of for the past few years when it's run, but he wasn't able to be there, so it was a fair stand-in, but a bit lacking in the humour and the comedy voices that George brings to his Advanced Hero Quest games. So George, we missed you. Please run another game next year. And I had a bit of a haul. So there's always, well, I say there's always, there has always been to this date, although it's not, it's not an expectation by any stretch of the imagination, there has always been a Bring Out Your Lead event miniature, sculpted by John Pickford, cast by Foundry, and this year it's this particularly fine space pirate captain. I had thought that I was going to fantasy him up, but he's got a lot of pipes, he's got a lot of very modern looking packs, he's got a lot of kit on him. I don't really think I can fantasy this guy up adequately. So I'm going to have to find something to do. I've got a few sci-fi figures. I guess he could go into one of those. I don't know. I'll find a use for him. If not, I'll find somebody who's got a use for him. But other things, there were a lot of figures being given away this year. Sort of extras in people's collections. Some a bit broken, but a lot of them just has been given away by people who have got collections that are a fairly sizable size and are looking to pass favours forwards or to trade things. We don't tend to trade at Foundry because it's a shop and we buy things from Foundry, but there was some trading going on outside, and I was fortunate enough to pick up a lot of Beastmen, a lot of plastic 4th edition Beastmen. These are from my forthcoming Chaos Army, which I'm going to be starting on my blog, FimMcCalls, that's all M's, fimmccalls.blogspot.com. I'm going to be starting that this month. That's an army challenge for Bring Out Your Lead next year. I'm going to be doing a Chaos Army based on sort of Italian wars, Italian city-states from the 15th century, but rooted in as a Slaneshi cult. So more on that in a moment. But yes, I managed to pick up lots of Beastmen. I'd put the word out, I was looking for plastic Beastmen, and lots of people obliged and brought me plastic Beastmen, which I'm going to have to convert now. So we'll see how many of those I actually get through. But that was good. And oops, I dropped him and broke him even further. I'll find him again in a minute. A metal Beastman to go with them as a champion. Some more plastic Hero Quest men at arms to pack out my regiments. A bunch of Grenadier townsfolk for my city. I was looking for sort of civilian characters for my city. So those guys are going into that. And a Ralpatha Wraith. There were some Ralpatha things courtesy of Stuart and Jacob at Ralpatha Legacy. There were some Ralpatha freebies for people who'd been doing some painting for the Ralpatha Legacy website, which I have been doing. So picked up one of these wraiths. I like him. He's a classic wraith, and also a Citadel corpse cart wraith that I'm going to have to find a use for somewhere in my undead army. And I bought some stuff from Foundry, because of course Foundry laying on everything for free. It's just polite, isn't it, to spend some money at Foundry. So I bought some more townsfolk. These are some of their sort of Renaissance range, but I think they're going to work fine as merchants and things in my town. And also, yeah, another pack of these I think are Dark Age civilians. More townsfolk. I'm going to have so many townsfolk. I really do have to start working on buildings. I'm going to have all these townsfolk who have nowhere to live. I need to make some more buildings for them to live in. And for my Chaos Army, the general of my Chaos Army, I was looking for a grotesquely overweight character to be my the head of my army, because I'm going for a sort of covert Slaneshi force. So it's all about opulence and luxury in the high levels of society. So I wanted a fat kind of cardinal, bishopy, pope figure to be the leader of my army, sort of based on the Borgia's house. And I couldn't really find anything. That Perry do a nice cardinal blessing on the donkey, but he's not really overweight or opulent enough. And somebody said, "Oh, why don't you try using one of the Foundry orcs? Sculpt a new head, sculpt new hands and legs on." Oh, I could, but actually the dwarves are much better scaled. They're still grotesquely overweight. I'm going to go for a dwarf, and my aim was to have Kev Adams resculpt the head on this guy, because he quite often is there doing head sculpts for charity, but in this instance, although he was there, he wasn't doing sculpting, so I'll have to rework over the head of this, which is fine. And I picked up a mule or a donkey, the only mule donkey that I could find after looking for ages in the Foundry shop, that wasn't laden with baggage already, was one from a Darkest Africa Explorers pack. So I bought that for the sake of the donkey, but the rest of it has gone to a good home. And so my plan now is to chop the fairly non-existent anyway feet off this dwarf, mount him on this donkey, and give him a nice big papal mitre. And then he's going to be the general for my army. So look out for that on the blog soon. That's going to be happening. So that was my haul from the weekend from Bring Out Your Lead 2021, which was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to next year. And hopefully next year will be a bit easier, it'll be a bit sunnier, there'll be some games organised, and it'll be a bit more back to normal. But it was nice to have a low-key session, so maybe I won't instantly jump on the big game next year. Maybe I'll continue sort of hanging around and seeing what's going on. There's usually something to find to pick up. And if you fancy going to what I think is probably the nicest, friendliest, most fun games event in the world, certainly in my current calendar, do come along and say hi. It'd be nice to see you. And I shall see you next week with something else. Take care. Bye.